Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, it is Season 5, Episode 72. It's a playoff edition of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. Have you tried the Canadian Club Ginger Ale? It's awesome. Crisp, refreshing alternative to beer with well-balanced flavors of ginger, the subtle notes of rye and spice. The new formula has 30% less sugar, 20% fewer calories. And that is Canadian Club Ginger Ale. And,
let me jump in before you go anywhere. I had one last night. We're sitting around. I had one.
Delicious.
Yeah, but the less sugar.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I liked it anyway, but I like this better. It was really great. I loved it.
Well, Holly, for whatever reason, we're all sensitive to how much sugar we consume, right? So whether it's a glass of wine or anything, the less sugar or zero sugar for her is better. So she tried one of these recently and was like, okay, yeah, I can work with that.
You know what it tastes like?
Delicious.
It tastes like another. It really does.
It tastes like you should hide it in the closet to keep it away from Landon. That's what it tastes like.
That's where it's going.
So I've got the Faculty of Law Alaskan t-shirt on, Ray. I think you can see it. Our friends on the YouTube channel.
Just lean back just a bit more so we'll get a look at it. Oh, yeah, there we go. There we go.
There it is, yeah. Purely in honor of my lovely daughter, Katie, and Matt, her significant other, who are both in class right now in Thunder Bay, writing the first of 2 bar exams.
Oh,
the second one is like in 2 weeks from now as we record here on Tuesday morning. So what an ordeal, man. I mean, good on these kids who just battle through law school for 3 years. I mean, med school, law school, go down the list of all this extended 7-year learning.
But you're sending the good vibes out there. You're sending it into the universe. Exactly right. Put it out there. Good for them. By the way, I don't think either you or I have either of those with our schooling.
No.
I have a shirt like that. It says, "Congrats, grade 11 and a half." That's pretty much it.
You are an astute and a studious guy. Like, you watch a lot of videos. Excuse me. You listen to a ton of podcasts. You read a lot. Yeah. I don't know, man. If you put your mind to it, I think you could pull it off.
I loved school, a lot of it. I didn't like a lot. It's high school. You're like, some of it you didn't want to do. I had a scholarship to go to Northern Michigan University, and I didn't tell you how life was different. I didn't know it was my draft year. And could you imagine a kid today not knowing it was their draft year? So like
NHL draft year, you didn't know?
Didn't know. I thought, because my birthday is August 23rd, I thought it was the next year because I thought that was a late birthday. The cutoff September 15th.
Sure. Yeah.
So in like January, my coach, Mark Pezzin, says, if you keep playing like this, you're going to get drafted. And I'm like, where? And he's like, in the NHL. And I'm like, really? Well, I had already accepted the scholarship. Then I got drafted and I was like, well, obviously I'm going to play in the NHL. Like, just think of how naive and clueless I was.
Yeah.
So the quickest way would be to go to the Western Hockey League. And so I left the scholarship, and like, I was going to school. My goal was to get a scholarship. I had no idea, clue that what was possible on the hockey side. And I always thought I would go back, and then all of a sudden I'm 7 years in and I'm like, I honestly, I wish I would have gone back and learned something, like a little bit more of whatever.
Yeah.
Because
still time, Ray. Still time. You have time.
Maybe when I retire.
Yeah.
I'll be a good buddy of mine, Kevin Quinn, who was my first play-by-play guy. Awesome guy.
Quinn.
When he had retired from doing the broadcasts with the Oilers, he went back to school. And he's he said it was amazing because, he'd be in class. It was all like, he's a car guy. Okay. And so he was doing a bunch of work and courses around that. And he said, the cool part is you're with a bunch of young people.
Yeah.
And they're really interested and interesting. And he said, it keeps you young. And I was like, wow, what a cool thing. So maybe something like that.
So many good times with him in the early days at Sportsnet.
Oh.
He is a character, right? I
What
mean, and very good play-by-play guy.
Very good. What a funny, subtle, funny guy. He had the first day we're doing a game, they say, we got to do the open. I'm like, yeah, what's that? And he turns to me, he goes, you don't know what the open is? I go, no, nobody told me. And he goes, you're supposed to have some ideas about what the game's about. I'm like, when does that happen? And he goes, oh, it's an open before the game. I had no idea. Nobody told me.
That's outstanding. Well, next time you're chatting with him, say hi to Kevin.
I will for sure. Yeah. I will send him a note.
And before we get to headlines, just speaking of very good, great play-by-play dudes, did you catch the call of Jack Michael?
Oh, yeah, sure.
With what, like 30 seconds left in Game 6 against the Dallas Stars, man. If you don't have to be an Oilers fan to appreciate what Jack brings to a broadcast, you know, and TV or radio, it doesn't matter because it translates on either form.
Do you know what, Dregs?
The
thing I thought, aside from Jack's obvious excitement, was there were 32 play-by-play guys.
Yeah.
In the NHL. And then there's, those that do national, which are not the same generally. There were so many good local, regional broadcasters. I guess that's the right word. But so in this series, there's two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Goalie is awesome in Florida. He brings an enthusiasm and an excitement and a knowledge. Jack is, Jack's got that big voice. If Jack tried to whisper to somebody 3 people away would hear.
Oh yeah, he's like such a voice.
But these guys they're so good at what they do, and that building was vibrating.
It was,
and Jack was too. I mean, it was
perfect.
It's awesome. It was awesome to hear it.
All right, time for headlines brought to you by Tim Hortons. Hey, cool down with your favorites for less at Tim's this summer during their first ever happy hour. Treat yourself to select $3 medium iced lattes and flavored cold brew every day from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. for a limited time at Tim Hortons. All right, we've got a ton of time to break down the Stanley Cup Final, the Edmonton Oilers, the Florida Panthers. We can appreciate why there's such a long break and why they're stretching it from June 8th to potentially June 24th. It's network driven. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters, though, is your opinion.
Let me just, because people, I get a whole pile of it. I'm sure you do too. It is television.
Yeah.
It is the NBA.
Yeah.
They want the games on opposite nights as much as possible. And as much as we all think hockey's the only show in town, it's not.
No.
There's lots of shows in town. Oh, and then there might be a concert that's jammed in there too.
Availability. Yeah.
And so then they have to buy out the concert to get the concert to move a day. and there's been a number of things already out there about it's the biggest or largest distance between two cities.
Yeah.
So the extra travel day does matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've got an extra travel day between games 2 and 3, then you're going to need it between 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Then, the last 3 games of this series, games 5, 6, and 7, are the ones where it really drags.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's game, 2 days off, game, 2 days off. And I just don't think there's a way around it. What they could do, honestly, and there's so much push, is just start the season 10 days earlier.
Yeah.
That's
the answer.
Yeah, lose the week break that teams get, because they all hate it in the season. They thought they were doing a good thing, but as it turns out, nobody really likes it because you don't get to pick when your week is. Some guys get it in October. They don't need it.
Yeah.
So if you did that, started 10 days later and killed the week break, so it's supposed to end at Game 7, June 24th. That would be June 7th. Yeah. Far more palatable.
Big difference. Big difference.
So anyways, we got what we got.
Yeah, and it's also a long break leading up to the Stanley Cup final start. But it's a long break for everybody, including the team. So I'm good with this. We can talk hockey for 5-6 days before it starts. I would assume, Ray, that this is welcomed rest for the players, especially on both sides?
I think it's too long for them.
Okay. Yeah.
They do enjoy the day off or 2 days off that they get right after. You know, you can just exhale a little bit. Then you get back and you start to get to work again. And then about Thursday, they're going to go, all right, it's time to go. Like, it's time to play. Mm-hmm. And Thursday, the Oilers are going to be flying. Mm-hmm. And then they'll practice Friday. And then they'll play Saturday. But those last days for the players, I mean, those that are banged up, of course, they love to break. A good example would be Sam Bennett in Florida, who missed time earlier with an injury. Each extra day he gets is a benefit. I mean, the Oilers have guys that are banged up as well. Vander Kane would be one that's, been dealing with stuff for most of the playoffs. So a couple of days lets everything settle down a little bit, and then you can give it another run up. But those are just two examples of many at this time.
Right. How much does the experience of being to the Stanley Cup Final last year work in the Florida Panthers' favor, or does it matter?
I guess if you get to this point, you're a terrific team, and it really doesn't matter, except everybody that goes through it says they're so much more comfortable the second time through. Okay. Now, I got to the conference final once. I couldn't believe how hard it was at that point.
Yeah.
Like, we won 9 games. We needed to win another 7 to win the Stanley Cup. And when you think of it that way, you go, like, how hard it is. Well, the Panthers last year have this experience of getting through. The Oilers have gotten, bumped their head on the conference final before, but they've never gotten here. I think there's a small advantage. And where the advantage is, I think there would be a tendency to panic less. Okay. If things don't go well, it's one game, it's one period, whatever it is. I think that's where the advantage is, but we're splitting hairs here, Dregs. I mean, at this point in the year, I don't think anybody's got a great advantage unless one of the star players was injured and out of the series.
Right. And clearly a high level of respect coming from both sides here. And that's always the case, the niceties before any series starts. And then you get, 2 games into it? And people aren't as nice anymore, right? Because they respect what's on the line here.
Remember Roadhouse? Patrick Swayze? Well, be nice till it's time not to be nice.
Yeah.
And that's really where you're at. I think this is one of the changes in the Oilers, or they're more comfortable in different kinds of games than they were in the past. They don't need to win 5-3. They can win, clearly, they can win 2-1 when they get 10 shots somehow. But they fight, they stayed in it, they're patient, they grind away. And Florida does that all the time.
Yeah.
Florida is, I'm telling you, for people that have not seen Florida, if they get to their game, it is relentless, and one line looks exactly like the next line.
Yeah.
Like, if you're having a stick handling contest, the top end of the Oilers will dust these guys.
Yeah.
But they're very talented players.
Super talented.
Barkov, Verhaeghe, Reinhart, Tkachuk, they're all handsy players. But there's a grind, a mentality to their team that I think will push the Oilers, and they'll have to respond. But here's the other thing is, and it'll be a real challenge. I mean, the Panthers showed, I thought, exceptional discipline against the Rangers.
Right.
They were only shorthanded 16 times in that series, and they gave up 1 power play goal. If they're shorthanded 16 times, if you just look at the stats, that's 5 goals that the Oilers scored, because their power play is 37%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they want to be aggressive. They have this mantra they talk about: stay up, stay in. They want to press at the opposite blue line. They want to keep the gaps tight. But if you take a few penalties, then what?
Yeah.
Do you get a little tentative? Is it a half a stride? We saw with McDavid's goal, that glorious frickin' play the other night. It's not even a half a stride. There was no room. And he still got through.
Yeah.
And so, if you back them up just a half a stride, does that become the Oilers' advantage? And all this is going to play out. And I think the fact that they're different teams is really cool.
Yeah. He couldn't even explain. Like he has no comprehension of what we're seeing. Right? He can't see it through our eyes
Right.
because he's doing it. Right? And his explanation was, I was just trying to get to the middle of the ice.
Yeah.
That was it. That was it. You know?
Okay, well, at the start of last year, when Connor Bedard was coming in as a rookie, and we were all trying to guess what he could do and what he might do, and of course the focus is on that shot of his.
Yeah.
And somebody asked him about it, and it was kind of a lousy answer because he's like, I just take it out here and I do this and I do that.
Yeah.
And so if you go on the ice and try it, you shoot it in the corner.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how did that happen? Like they don't like what McDavid does at such a high speed. I think this is why, as our great Steve Dryden called him, the most evolved player of all time, is that he does things at a speed that the great players of the past could not.
Which is saying a lot.
That to me is the essence of McDavid. He does great things at a speed that nobody else can do them at.
All right, you've kind of touched on him, but the Panthers are talking about how they hope to defend and slow McDavid and company. And, it's always about a 5-man approach. But, is it safe at this point going in to assume that as much as Maurice can, he's going to have Ekblad and Forsling out there, obviously against Connor or against Draisaitl, depending on how things shake down. Barkov will be on shutdown duty. Maybe throw Sam Bennett into that mix because those players, not only do they embrace it, right, but they relish the strength of playing defense just as much as they do generating offense or scoring a pretty goal.
Yeah, they're an exceptional defending team. They just don't give you much room. They do a lot of their defending in the other end. And that's what's really kind of unique about them is that they forecheck and their aggressiveness is in the other end. So they don't spend time, a lot of it in their zone. I'm going to give you a little quiz here.
Okay.
So Florida played Tampa, which is Nikita Kucherov.
Yeah.
Boston, which is David Pastrnak.
Pretty
and the
good
Rangers with Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, and Artemi Panarin.
Right.
Against Forsling and Ekblad, how many 5-on-5 goals did those players get? Those 5 players.
Collectively?
Collectively.
I want to say like 2.
0. Like, how does that even happen? So one thing Paul Maurice talks about, and I think it goes along with this painting of the Florida Panthers, is as much as they can, this is Maurice's words, we don't change the way we defend. So whether it's Pastrnak or Kucherov or Kreider, they're all different players, right? But they don't generally change their structure of how they defend. I think the one thing against McDavid that everybody tries to do, and it's really hard to do, is as much as you can get somebody right up in his first stride.
Yeah.
To make him have to adjust, that maybe you slow him down just enough that the next wave can get there. Because as soon as he turns the corner, everybody's in full retreat. Like you can have a plan and then you're like, okay, I don't know if this plan works against that car. So you gave 2 examples of Bennett and Barkov. I would think if they have their way, they would play Barkov's line against McDavid and Bennett's line against Draisaitl.
Right.
And that's where the coaches will have to decide how much they're going to chase a matchup.
Yeah.
Or they, because it doesn't look like either guy is so married to a matchup that they're going to disrupt the way their bench runs.
Right.
And so that means the other guys, you're going to get out there against these great players too. You just have to do your job for that shift.
So many terrific individual stories in this series. And really that's what the Stanley Cup Final should be built around. And normally it is. Guys that fly under the radar. Yeah, both teams have that. I don't think that Zach Hyman, as an example, has flown under the radar. He leads the NHL in postseason goals with 14 shots on goal, high danger goals, high danger shots. His 9th full season, Ray, in the National Hockey League. The man turns 32 on Sunday.
Right.
In regular season games, he's played 580, I believe, and he's hit his peak. I mean, of course, you have to give credit to Connor McDavid and the situations on the power play and all of that. But end of day, this guy has to execute. I mean, if I want to rewind the clock to his Toronto days, I thought it was a mistake at the time that the Maple Leafs didn't extend Zach Hyman because of how effective he was with Matthews and Marner.
Yeah.
I did not see the goals that this guy pours into the net. He's gotten better and better and better in the 3 years in Edmonton. I mean, did you see it coming?
Not like this. I mean, the mistake for the Leafs is they underestimated the importance and difficulty of playing with a great player.
Yeah.
So when Hyman left, they thought Michael Bunting could maybe fill that role, and he did fine. But there's a clear difference in the player. Like Hyman is heavy and thick and big and doesn't need the puck. And there is a way to play with great players, and some guys can figure it out and others can't. Some just aren't capable because there's a lot of pressure when you have the puck to put it on the great player's stick. If you keep throwing it in his feet,
yeah,
there's going to be a change and you're going to be it. And it starts with Hyman. His base level is his work rate. It's relentless.
Yeah.
Like it's just, you know what's crazy? I just thought of this. Hyman was drafted by Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just thought of that.
Yeah.
And so there's an example of how long it takes somebody to work and find their way. Went to Michigan and nobody was really, they found him the Leafs found him at Michigan because they were watching Dylan Larkin. And they're like, wait a minute, who's this guy over here? And so they made a trade. I'm going to now have to look it up who he got traded for. Yeah. And I want to say, does Greg McKegg sound right?
It does sound right. I'm going to double check.
There was a 7th round draft choice in there somewhere or another. Anyway, the people that say, oh yeah, he was with Matthews and then he was with McDavid. Yeah, other players could have done that too. Yeah. But they didn't. Yeah. If it was so easy, they didn't. And the goal totals that he's had since coming to Edmonton and what he's done this year, remarkable. When I see them around the rink, one of my most favorite people to see. He's a tremendous person. So
good. Yeah.
And just an outstanding player. And I don't know if whatever the Oilers thought they were getting, I don't know if they thought 54 goals in the season and 14 in the playoffs was it, but damn, he's had an amazing year.
Yeah, his rights, Zach Hyman's playing rights, were acquired by the Maple Leafs June 2015 in exchange for Greg McKegg and a draft pick, conditional draft pick.
Wild.
Wild is right.
How do you think Ken Holland would like to redo that? Or like to sit back and go, gee, let's find another Zach Hyman. That would be nice. What a free agent signing.
The Leafs wouldn't give him the trade protection. The money was there, the term was there. Toronto just didn't feel comfortable giving him trade protection. They were worried that long term his health was going to be in question.
And see, that's a valid concern. Yeah. But isn't it wild what revisionist history is? Because you have to go back to that time and go, geez, like he played really hard and he, is he going to get hurt? We're worried about it in years 4 and 5. And as it turned out, it was a bogey.
Every team has these players. It just feels like Toronto's got too many of them. Carter Verhaeghe is on the list. We go down the list of all these guys. Oops. Yeah. All right. Let's get to goaltending. Stu Skinner, Ray, are you ready to say that Stu has silenced his critics?
No. And the reason I'm going to say that is the Oilers are in the Stanley Cup Final. And I'm reading stuff online, which always amuses me. When I have time, I read it because it amuses me. And people are still saying that Ken Holland is a moron. Doesn't know how to manage. Has a bad contract. Jack Campbell's a bad signing. Yes, it was. Every GM has them. You're in the finals, and people still can't say that this is a result of lots of people's work.
Oh.
Stu Skinner was out of the net for games 4 and 5 against Vancouver. He lost the net. Like, just think of the courage it took for Chris Knobloch to take him out and put in a guy that had played most of his career in Cal Pickard in the American League. Their season's on the line. Right? And since that time, he's played 8 games, 8 games, and given up 15 goals. This is Skinner.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm going to say no is because it doesn't almost matter what he's done to this point.
Right.
Except it does matter. Like, the point is, he's not going to silence his critics if he comes up and gives up 4 goals and 5 goals in the first 2 games, no matter how they go in.
No, that's fair. No.
So he's always, for the second straight series, he goes into the series as the second best goalie in the series.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the last series, it doesn't matter because they're gone. They've moved on. Like, look at how many teams, Dregs, over the last 4, 5, 6 years have won with goaltending that you wouldn't have thought of could win.
Right. Yeah.
Aiden Hill was the 3rd goalie for Vegas.
Yeah.
And then they won the Stanley Cup with him. Skinner, when they were stumbling around at the start of the year, part of the reason was him and Jack Campbell couldn't stop a beach ball. They were awful. And they sent Campbell down and they basically said, this is your net. There is no more help coming.
Yeah.
And he responded, had a very good year, a really lousy start to the playoffs, and has been terrific when he's had to be late.
Yeah.
They don't win game 6 without him. I do think part of the scouting report on him will be side-to-side plays are an issue for him. He can lose the net a little bit, and anything from behind the net to the front is a challenge because he'll lose the puck.
Yeah.
And that'll be up to Florida to try to attack from there, because if he's square on, the guy's a monster.
He is big dude.
And he covers a lot of the net.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, he silenced a lot of his critics, but the next 10 days are going to tell us much more.
Okay, so if there is that side-to-side factor and Florida is able to get him moving, get to the front of the net, create as much chaos as possible, that's part of the physical approach of the Florida Panthers.
Sure.
Is physicality going to be a factor?
I don't know, Dregs. I do think it will be a factor because that's how Florida plays. Like, they're not going to change. They're not going to all of a sudden become the 83 Oilers. Like, that's not going to happen, right? Like, you can't be what you're not. They're built to play a certain way. They're built to go straight ahead, to chip pucks behind the defense, to go ahead and get the body on the defense. And part of that is, if they can back the Oilers off with that physical play, then they're going to get plays across the front of the net.
Sure.
And that's a problem. So for the Oilers, their defense and defending and how they help Skinner is to try and keep the puck isolated on one side of the ice. If it starts going side to side, like right around the front of the net, that's going to be a problem. So I do think, like, the last 3 games, Philip Broberg came in and did a really nice job for the Oilers.
He did,
I think in this series we'll see Vincent Desharnais again. Because you're going to need the size and the bulk. Might not be in game 1, but I think at some point he'll work his way back in, whether it becomes 7D or what. But I think that would be a counteract to the physicality of the Panthers.
Okay, well, that leads us nicely into what I thought would be the last item of headlines, and that's some of the coaching decisions here. Clearly Paul Maurice has an abundance of experience and outmatches Chris Knobloch in that regard. But I think, in fairness, you have to look beyond, don't you, the head coaches? And we know how influenced Paul Coffey is on defense. Mark Stewart, his input and helping orchestrate a flawless penalty kill. Goalie, Glenn Gulletson, I mean, we're still talking about him as being a head coach top candidate, even though there aren't many chairs available anymore. So head-to-head, Maurice versus Knobloch, is it a factor at all as we prep for game 1?
Well, it's a factor unless it's not, right? Like it's just like saying, like, experience matters in the playoffs till the inexperienced team wins.
Yeah.
And then it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I've said this more than a few times about Knobloch. I'm just so impressed that nothing seems to rattle him.
No, cool demeanor. Yeah.
Like I'm watching him in Game 7. I was against Vancouver. I was doing the game. I'm standing between the benches. They're in control for 50 minutes. And then they're not.
Yeah.
It's 3-1. It's 3-2. And they call their timeout. I look over there, and he looks like he was going for a walk. Like there's nothing.
Yeah.
It didn't look like his heart rate was rising. Maybe it was, but he's just so calm.
Yeah.
He seems to see the big picture, which I think is hard for some coaches because they start to narrow in and they're worried about one thing and then they forget 3 other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Knobloch is really impressive. What's kind of interesting though is to see him like this. How come he was in the American League for so long? Like nobody else saw him as this, or else they would have hired him. Which is such an interesting, cool thing about the game is you just grind away and you get your chance. As for Maurice, Dregs, you know him really well.
Yeah.
Since he came back to Florida, there just seems to be another level of comfort, of surety, of like he just, it's almost like he thought he was out. And then he got brought back in, and he, in that time away, almost like this passion and fire was reinvigorated in him. I know he's having a blast. Of course, we see it with the media and all his press conferences, but it's like he just seems to have the answer. He's told us a couple of things, and he'll say, yeah, this isn't for air. And he'll, just to give us a little background on the team, but you get these moments and you're like, oh my God, he's thinking 5 paces down the road. It's really interesting to see how a coach's mind works.
Yeah. And you know what? I think we all get there at wherever that place is. But I think you've nailed it. I mean, there's a peace, a passion, and an appreciation in Paul Maurice that is well earned, right? I mean, he's got 3 adult children all on their way, so they're all good. They're set. You know, they're leading different lives and having a great time doing that. You know, his wife Mitch loves Florida. Why wouldn't you love Florida? So, you know, he moved away from the Winnipeg Jets because he wanted to. He didn't have the things that we've just talked about, and went and holed up at the cottage and did a ton of fishing, read a bunch of books, recharged the battery, and then the opportunity in Florida is presented by Billy Zito, and he's like, yeah, well, I think
this is what I've learned about being around Paul for a couple of weeks is as much passion as he has about the game of hockey.
Yeah.
If you want to really ignite him, ask him about his fishing.
Yeah.
Oh, he just loves it. And Billy Zito, he said, I never fished before. And then I went down there and he's like, and I'm hooked. Like he couldn't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's of the many things that are of appeal in Florida. There's a couple of, like Paul's a longtime fisherman, eh? And
he is. That. And he's, you know what pisses me off about him? I played golf with him once because he's not a golfer, or so he says. And this was back in the day in Carolina. And he gets up there, and the guy's like, what, 6'3", you know, big,
big
long
man.
Swing. Just rocket after rocket right down the middle. Yeah, he makes a bogey here or there, comes off the golf course with like a 79 or an 80. When did you play last? Oh, I don't know. It was like 6 years ago. Like, you know, he's like, I don't have time for golf. Like, I like to fish and I coach, and that's what I do. So, anyway.
Oh, there you go. And he took your money.
He did. Yeah. Those are your headlines.
Good coaches. Yep. Good coaches at
coaches,
different ends of their careers. And I think like a lot here, Dregs, this series is really shapes up to be fascinating. Last year, it felt like with Florida as beat up as they were, that it wasn't going to be much of a series. That's what it
this
felt
is gonna
like
be a
going
good
in.
one.
This one
Yeah.
doesn't feel like that at all.
I'm with you on that. All right, those are your headlines. Thank you to Tim Hortons.
It's happy hour at Tim's. Try the new tiramisu cold brew. Steeped cold for 16 hours for a bold yet smooth coffee taste. Get a medium for only $3 from 2 to 8 p.m.
Our interviews on Ray and Dregs brought to us by Canadian Club 1858 Original. Ask Ray and Dregs anything. You can send us your questions on X and Instagram at Ray and Dregs or on the website rayanddregs.com. And I think we've got enough time, Ray, for just a couple of quick questions.
Sure, fire 'em up.
Because I'm pretty sure that our astute leader, our supervisor of the pod, Ryan Rashog, has basically said, you know what? Let's just do one podcast this week just to set up the hype machine. Then we'll get rolling next week as the series is underway.
Yeah.
So here's an Ask Ray and Dregs Anything from Nico, and you're going to like this, Ray. It's about sweater numbers.
Oh,
Nico says, what's up, boys? Love the pod. I'm from Hartford, and a men's league team I played on wore throwback Hartford Whalers sweaters. I was privileged to wear number 26, the number of Ray Ferraro. So Nico wants to know, Ray, what's the story? How did you choose number 26?
I was in the American League in Binghamton. I was wearing number 20. And I got called up, walked into the locker room, and on my helmet, my green helmet, was the number 26. And I was like, oh. So I went out for the morning skate. You're wearing just a practice jersey. And came back that night, and number 26 was hanging in my stall. And so with no thought and no option, I might add that, no option. Like nobody asked.
No.
Here's your number. And if it would have been number 52, maybe I would have asked somebody somewhere.
Yeah.
But it was 26, and then it was. And then I got traded to the Islanders, and Pat Flatley was wearing number 26, and he'd been there a while, and I got number 33. And I was like, I hate this frickin' number. I hated it. And then one day we made a bunch of transactions. A couple guys got traded. Somebody got sent down, and number 20 opened up. And I went right to the equipment room, and I'm like, I want number 20. Is there any way to do it? Yeah. And I ended up with number 20. And
that's awesome.
So there's not many guys get to pick it. No. Like you just get in there and there's a jersey there. You're just so freaking happy to have a jersey. I mean, could have had a question mark on the back. I would have worn it. I don't know.
All right. Thank you, Nico. One more here from Grant McManus. About player safety. Love the pod. First time submitting to Ask Ray and Dregs Anything.
Thank you, Grant.
If the NHLPA is there to protect players as well as the National Hockey League, why do they allow players to use mouth guards as chew toys and wear visors that don't cover their eyes?
No, well, the chew toy is Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't know why he has it, other than it's a comfort thing. It's not a safety thing, because you're not going to swallow it, right? Like, if he gets hit, the thing's going on the ice somewhere, or Kreider's going to grab it and try and throw it over the glass. I would say the difference, is I don't like the visor versus mouth guard debate. Yeah. I started wearing a mouth guard, and then after a while, I just hated it, and I took it out. The last, 10 years of my career, I never had a mouth guard. I guess I felt like if I was going to lose my teeth, they could fix those. And a mouth guard really, if you've got a mouth guard in and somebody shoots a puck off your mouth, probably not helping you anyway. But I always felt, that's why I took the mouth guard out. And I think that's why there's probably not anything about that. The visor thing, I just don't get it. I don't know why guys don't wear them the way they're intended. It is ridiculous to say that you can't see through one. Man, the ones we wore, if you burped, your visor fogged up.
Yeah.
Right. They were no good, but that's what they had at the time. The ones now, it's like nothing's there. It's like It's almost like saying I'd prefer to drive without a windshield. Yeah, you could see better, but bugs would fly and hit you in the face. It would be really stupid. So I used to hate when Landon played and he'd wear his visor on top of his head. Drove me crazy. So I don't know why they don't mandate it. Oh, you know what? Remember when they tried it with Leo Komarov?
Yeah.
And you were supposed to get a warning and then a penalty. It was in the preseason. We were doing a game. They warned Komarov 53 times. And they gave him a penalty, and then the next shift he came on. It was almost like the fast face-off. At some point, there was a rule about the fast face-off.
Yeah.
That got thrown in the dumpster. So the visor thing, I don't know why they don't enforce it, but they don't.
No, they don't. And you know what? Kind of similar to the availability of the cut-resistant options, like the wrist sleeves, you know, the neck guards, like go down the list. You know, at some point, will it be mandatory? Potentially, but you know, it's available. The league and the Players Association promote these products. How do you force a player to use it correctly? I mean, you know, it's a small victory, I guess, just get him and put the visor on in the first place. So, yeah, it's age old, man. It's age old. All right, that's Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. What
Thanks,
do you got
guys.
Rest of the week? You got some golf
I have
lined
got
up before all breaks
well.
loose?
It was awesome coming home, you know, get to see the family. Cammie's in Buffalo for the combine. So I haven't seen her yet. And I think she gets home Wednesday night. And I leave Thursday for, it's kind of a comedy show, actually. So this morning I was getting kids out to school and soccer and breakfast and all that stuff. So just prepping for the series. And I get in there Friday afternoon and into Florida and just I am gonna play golf tomorrow. So
nice.
That's a victory. I'm looking forward to that. But other than that, just getting ready for the series. We're on the home stretch and I love it and I'm privileged to do it and I can't wait to get there.
Paddle to the metal right through July 1st for me as well. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. All right, buddy.
Busy time, good time.
Travels.
And thank you, Dregs, and all the best to Katie. And Matt, and hope they grind their way through it. Sending out good vibes to them.
I appreciate that. And thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs, our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and Tim Hortons. Until next time, stay safe, everybody.